Good morning everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Nina and I am a second year veterinary science student at University of Pretoria campus. So today I'll be telling you about my story, how I got into veterinary science, how I got interested in it, and just a little bit of my journey towards getting admitted finally. So I was one of those people who wanted to be a vet since I was just this big. I always wanted to be a vet, and I think it stemmed a lot from the fact that my mother really also wanted to become a vet, so she was very interested in animals and caring for them. And sorry if there's a lot of background noise, someone is cutting down trees. But I remember specifically when I was little, and then we would find little chicks that fell out of their nests around our garden because we had a very big garden. And then, my mom would take them in and she would keep them warm, but, don't keep them too warm, and you have to feed them this and you should heat it up a little bit so that it's not cold. And, it was always just so amazing to me that she knew these things. And, and from there, I think it came a lot from the thing of like, I wanted to help animals one day, but I also wanted to know how to help them. I wanted to be knowledgeable about it. I wanted to understand. I wanted to do what I knew was best for them. So then, obviously, veterinary science became a very good option. Now, I also always had a very big thing of, I want to make the world a better place. But, more in the thing of, I wanted to make one person's world a better place for just one day. I wanted to do the little things, the little things like a little puppy who might one day have gotten, rabies. And I can save him by giving him an injection today. And no one will know that I made that puppy's life better. I might not even know it. The puppy definitely doesn't know it. He's just mad at me for injecting him. But I wanted to make the small difference in one life. I always felt like that was what I needed to do in this world. There are a lot of people who try to change the world for the better, but I wanted to do the small things. So that was a very important thing for me. So when I told my parents I want to be a vet, my dad was like, "Sure, sweetie." And my mom was a bit hesitant, to say the least, and for good reason. It was just purely logical that I remember that her three main arguments was that firstly it was a very long course, where most degrees at University of Pretoria, if you do your honours as well, then it's a 4-year degree. Without your honours, 3-year degree. So 3-4 years, it's okay. And then vet school comes and it's a 6-year degree, and then an extra year of community service, and that is if you do not want to study further. So it's a very long course, and my mom wanted me to keep that in mind because, she had a bit of a mindset and understand where it's coming from of you can't really start your life until you've finished your studies. It keeps you very busy. You can't really start a family while studying. Well, if there are people who do this, well done. I cannot imagine having a family to care for in my current situation, and I'm only second year. That was something that she wanted me to keep in mind, but I was like, I'm not going to start a family at 20 anyways, so, I'm fine. A long study course doesn't matter to me. And then what went hand in hand with it being a long course was that me studying vet school would be very expensive, which I feel is very fair that she reminded me of that. So she just pointed it out to me, because there are so many extra years of studying, it is so many extra years of paying, where not only for my studies, but they also have to support me. So that was also a worry that she had. And then lastly, it was a big thing of what a small chance I had of getting in. In general, people have a small chance of getting in because it's the only veterinary school in South Africa. Unfortunately, there are very few people that they can admit every year. So in general, you have a very small chance. I think they get something like 1,500 applications every year, and I think they can admit something like 200. So that gives you a very small chance. Also adding the fact that they try to distribute it, area-wise a little bit. So me coming from Pretoria, which has a lot of people and a lot of people who apply, it gave me a bit of a smaller chance to get in from here. Also, the fact that I'm a girl, there are a lot more girls who apply than guys, and they try to keep it about 50-50 to get an even distribution of vets. And so that also gave me a smaller chance. And then also there is the thing of race, where they have to try and distribute it more or less equally between races. That also contributed to me getting a bit of a smaller chance. So in the end, I did not have a very big chance of getting in. I think we worked out, according to statistics, that there are about 8 spaces that I can fill one of 8 spaces if you take into account all of the factors. It was something like that. And, my mom was always like, it's only 8 spaces, and, which it's probably not accurate. This is just from stuff that we've heard. But, and I remember I always told her, and these were the words that I lived by during my grade 11 and matric years. I always told her that someone has to fill those spaces. Someone has to get in. Someone has to do that. And it could be me, it could be 8 other girls, but it could also be me. And I'm not gonna give up my chance, on the off chance that I don't get in. So I was like, I'm gonna try anyway. But saying all that, during the time when we were all very skeptic about my chances of getting in, with my parents being worried about all the things that I've named, and them reminding me of it, quite often. And my dad was sort of, he sort of had the thing of, just give it some time, she's still young, she doesn't really know what she wants to do. So he wasn't very supportive, but he wasn't also against it. So we had that. So I was a little bit hesitant about it because of all the points that my mom made, and I was still young, my dad had a good point, maybe I find something completely different. So I was a bit hesitant about it, not to the point where I wouldn't apply, because honestly there was nothing else that I wanted to do. But I was a bit hesitant. I started looking at different things that I might be interested in. We took me for tests that they do that tell you what you're supposed to do. Apparently I'm supposed to be a plumber or an electrician. That's the perfect job for me. So they told us that, and I was like, I don't think I want to do that. Nothing against plumbers or electricians. I just can't quite see myself doing that. So I was like, okay, maybe I should be looking around, maybe I should shadow at different places. And I remember the turning point was a family dinner. I remember it very clearly. My mom and my aunt were talking, and, I sort of walked up to them, and my aunt was like, oh, how's it going? And, the thing sort of came up, it quite often does, since the time that you're about 16, where people go, what are you going to do one day? Or what are you going to be one day? And I was like, oh, this question. I was like, well, I want to be a vet, but my mom doesn't agree. And I said it like that as well, because, it was very much at the point where I was like, vet school, and my mom was like, ooh. So, and my mom had the whole thing of, no, that's not what I meant, I would support you and all of that. And my aunt sort of shushed my mom, and she looked at me and she was like, do you want to be a vet? And I was like, well, yeah. And she was like, okay, well then go be a vet. And I was like, okay, I will. And that was basically the point where I made my decision. I am going to be a vet, whether I was going to get in on first try, second, third, 100th try, but I was going to be a vet. And I made that decision, and I stuck with it through everything that I did from that point on. And I'm really thankful that I did. So then I did a lot of shadowing. I started going all over the country basically to shadow. Because we were told that for the value added form, which is the form that we had to fill in with basically everything that they needed to know for our application, not only our experience with animals, but also different things like, your academic things, your non-academic things, your sport things, everything that you've done. You have to put everything on there. And I'm going to do a whole different video on what I put on my value added form, how I applied all of those things, everything that I did, the stuff I focused on. Do a whole video on that, because that's a pretty big thing. So I did a lot of shadowing. I went to the Aar in the Karoo, which is like this tiny little town in the Karoo. It's actually sad because it's one of the bigger towns in the Karoo. But I went there in the winter for a week, and it was just after the breeding season. So then we were at the point where we had to scan all the sheep. We scanned 1,600 sheep in 3 days to see whether they were pregnant or not, and with how many lambs. So it was ice cold. The vet would pick me up at 6 o'clock every morning, drop me off at 5 o'clock every evening. It was freezing the whole day. We were outside the whole day. I mean, technically we were inside because we were in the barn, you know, in all different farms' barns, but it was still so cold in there. The one morning when he picked me up, there were icicles, you know, like spreading over his windshield. It was horrible. It was so cold, but I enjoyed it so much. And I remember at one point he was like, "Oh, do you want to scan for a bit?" And then obviously he would check to make sure that I was all right. And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, that sounds amazing." And I was scanning and I was looking at it, and you know, it's black and white and that's about it, you know. And I was looking at it and I was like, I really don't know. And he was like, "Well, you know what, just use your imagination. See that looks like a head, that looks like a spine. Yeah, we've got twins." I was like, okay, this one's got 5. But yeah, obviously there is more to that than just guessing, but it plays a role. I also went to Modimole, to a vet there that they had a lot of variation. They did wildlife and pets, and then also large animals. I remember the one day people literally walked in with their pet sheep. You know, there are people sitting there with their dogs and cats in crates, and these people just walked in with their sheep because usually the vet would go out to farms for farm animals, but these people were like, no, it's their pet sheep, they're bringing her in. So that was very interesting. I also got to see an autopsy on a gemsbok, which was really cool. That was the only autopsy I ever saw, and I really enjoyed it. Got to see loads of different things, a lot of variation, so really appreciated that. My matric year was a very difficult year. It was the year that we had to give in our applications. We apply with our grade 11 marks, and then they see if we can maintain those marks for matric. So it was, you know, the start of the year. I was working so hard. I'd worked so hard the previous year. I had just gone through a very difficult breakup. I was struggling with friend relationships, family relationships. Everything was going on at that point. I was working so hard with all my schoolwork. We also had, our year was, I think, 3 weeks shorter than the other years were, for a mixture of different reasons. But yeah, so they had to fit the same amount of work into a 3 week shorter year, which 3 weeks doesn't sound like a lot, but apparently it was a lot, and we were pushed just about past my breaking point. And it was also the year that we had to do my application, so on top of all the stuff that I was struggling with at school, I also had to do a lot of shadowing, and then also things like, obviously, non-school related things also counted a lot. So I remember for my community project type thing, you know, they see if you do any community work, you know, outreaches and stuff like that. And, you know, I hadn't done much of that. You know, I did some in like primary school, but I hadn't for a long time, and I didn't have any records of that. So I remember it was on the day that we had to send in our application. It was the last day, it was the deadline. I think we sent it in an hour before the deadline. But I had no community projects, you know, nothing that I had done. And my dad was like, okay, quick, we're going to take you to go donate blood. Which I wanted to do anyway. I was going to start donating blood anyway, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. But my dad drove me over, I donated blood, I came back, we put that in as proof. So I still donate blood. It is something that I wanted to do from the start, but hadn't been able to. And that was just really funny to me that we squashed that in last minute. So yeah, and then, you know, my dad was, he was the most supportive person. He was sort of like my work type support. Like, he helped me, he got me work at a piggery for a whole weekend, which was horrible. Amazing, but horrible. The stench is just, it's unbelievable. But the pigs are amazing. I love pigs, they are so cool. Except for how human they can be. If you look into their eyes, especially the ones with blue eyes, they look so human, and also they scream. They sound like humans. I remember I had to inject the piglets with just routine stuff. I think it was actually that there was an outbreak of something and I had to give them each antibiotics. And first I watched how the manager did it, and then she gave it to me, and I was injecting them, and some are fine. The smart ones are like, there's a little pinch, it's fine, it's probably a mosquito. And then there are the other ones where you look at them and they just start screaming, and oh, it was horrible. And you inject them and they scream louder, and you put them down and they scream louder. They were just happy with nothing. But yeah, so my dad got me work there. He got me work at a lot of different types of vets. And he also did a lot of things that wasn't necessary for my application. It wasn't necessary to get me into vet school, but it was stuff that he felt that I would need as a vet one day. So different kind of life skills, people skills, that he would give me opportunities to learn all of these things because he felt that I would need it. And I'm so thankful for that. Because, in the moment you tend to forget a lot what you're working towards. You sort of just focus on what you think you need right now. There were like a few things that you needed on your application. And, I was so focused on I need this. And then you forget that, one day when you're a vet, this won't matter as much, but this will. These life skills are more important. Some things are more important than the things that you need to put on your value-added form. And so my dad helped a lot with that. Which I'm very thankful for. He really helped me a lot in the bigger picture as well as what we needed to do right then. And then my mom was just all over the place catching all the balls I was dropping, because I was having meltdowns and panic attacks weekly because I have these assignments and those assignments, and I have to fill in my application form, and I have to do this, I have to do that, I still have horse riding. It was crazy. And she was just catching every ball that I was dropping. She was just there helping me with every single emotional issue that I had, of which there were a lot at that point. So I really admire the amount of patience that she had with me and still has with me, because she's honestly still doing it. And also my boyfriend was amazing support. There were so many days where I would sort of get fed up with my family, because also because of the application, and it was so important that year, often I would get home, it would be such a long day, and they would be like, okay, quick, your application. And I was like, oh, I cannot. So then often after a long day, I would just go and sit at his apartment and I would just do my work. I couldn't even afford to sit and talk to him because I had so much work to do, but I would literally sit there and do my work and be so stressed, and he would just sit there and pat my back and be like, it's okay, sweetie, you'll be fine. So yeah, I really appreciate all of his effort as well, and all of his patience, because so many freakouts that he just had to handle. He very quickly learned how to work with me, which I admire. And yeah, we finally got to send in my application. I was lucky enough to get admitted on the first try. Then for the rest of the year, I just had to make sure that my marks were high enough, that they stayed as high as my grade 11 marks, which is probably the most stressful thing ever because of the extra workload and all of that. It was very difficult to keep it where it was. Because I ended with very high grade 11 marks, and I actually went down with 1 TPT mark. For those of you who don't know, TPT is basically, I think the highest one that you can get for a subject is a 7, and that's if you get 80 or higher, and then if you get 70 in the 70s, then you get a 6, 60s you get a 5, and so it goes down. So for accounting, instead of my 80 that I got for grade 11, I got a 79, which still took me down 1 TPT point, and I was actually really worried about it. I mean, I knew logically they wouldn't kick me out over 1 TPT, but I was still worried, and luckily it didn't make a difference. But yeah, and I actually found out that I was admitted on the day that we had our 40 days celebration. I was busy getting ready because my friend's mom had to drive us to the place where the thing was, and and my friend WhatsApped me, and she was like, hey, listen, the results are out, because she was also applying for vet school. And I was like, oh geez, I need to find it. I couldn't find it, I was lost with it. And then the wording is horrible. Like, they don't tell you, congratulations, you're in. I think they said something like your application was successful, which just sounds like they got it, like they know that you have applied. So I was there like, I don't know what this means, and we were trying to figure out, and I still had to get ready, and it was completely crazy, and it turned out that I was in. It was just so emotional. I mean, my dad was crying. My dad is the most unemotional person in the world. He was crying. My mom was crying and screaming. I was crying, and I was like, I didn't believe it, honestly. And then I got into the shower to shower to get ready, and I just broke down and started crying because I'd been working so hard, and all of us had sacrificed so much for me to be able to do this. And it just all paid off in that one moment of seeing that, and it was amazing. Like, really, the day that you find out that you've been accepted, it is one of the best days of your life. So, which is another reason that I'm glad I make these videos, because you tend to forget things. You always have these things of, I want to remember this moment forever, and then 5 years later it's sort of like, geez, what happened that day? So this is also a way for me to remember all of my things that I went through and that I experienced on this journey, which I really want to remember. Like, things like that is, sorry, my dog's at the door. Things like that, it's something that you need to remember forever. It's something that, helps form the rest of your life. So yeah, that was amazing. Then probably just my last thing for my vet story is my future plans. I actually plan on going to the Karoo and becoming a vet there. For those of you who are not from South Africa or who don't know the Karoo, it is very dry, very dull, like there is no color. Yeah, that's about it. Very hot in the summer, freezing cold in the winter. The only things that grow there are bushes that are about this high, and yeah, that's about it. But honestly, that place just has a way of growing on you. It just forms a special place in your heart. Not for everyone. I think the Karoo picks some people that it's like, I think I would like you. You're gonna stay here now. But yeah, we would always, when we drive down to the Cape, it's a 14-hour drive, so we would always sleep over in the Karoo because it's about halfway, and we would stay on some farm with the sheepies in the background. There are lots of sheep. That's the only thing that lives there is sheep. And you would just be there, and it would just be so amazing and so calm. I think that's what caught me a lot, is how calm it is. When you're a vet, there's a lot going on. I mean, I can't speak as a vet, but what I've seen from vets and heard from vets, you have such a hectic life, and I think just having the calmness of the Karoo really caught me, because I, especially matric, when I was going through such a hectic time, and we went there at some point, and I was just like, this place is just perfect. It's beautiful. It does have a lot of beautiful spots, but in general, it is really just dull and brown. And flat, very flat. But it has some of the most beautiful places ever. It is so calm, and it's my heart's place. So I can't wait to be there one day. As far as specialization goes, I don't know yet. I've always thought that I wanted to be an equine vet, having, well, not quite grown up with horses, but my mom and I spent so much time at the stables. I basically grew up with them. So I've always been interested in them, in how I could help them, and also you would quite often hear vets say, like, this, in animals you see this and this and this, except for horses. There is always an except for horses. Horses always have a way of being different. So they really interest me. I love horses so much. They played a vital role in my life always. Horse therapy is also a real thing. So I've always wanted to do that, but also taking into account, having been part of the horse world, the people that come with horses, they're usually very nice people, but very attached to their horses is a nice way to put it. They are very, they can put a lot of pressure on a vet, to say the least, if something happens to that horse, because it is also a very big financial commitment. There are extra pressure on the owner, so they put extra pressure on the vet, because now it's their little angel, and their little very expensive angel, and then if you do something wrong, then there are big issues. So I'm still deciding if I am willing to face that. But yeah, so far I'm leaning towards horses. They've always interested me. I've always loved them, loved working with them. But yeah, I expect that to change several times over the next few years. I will learn so much about the different animals. You know, I haven't worked a lot with stuff like cattle, sheep, and goats, so maybe I will fall in love with goats. I hate goats, but I love them. They are extremely smart, which bothers me. It's very easy to work with a stupid animal because it's easier to think for them. Like a sheep, honestly, if you make them sit down, they would just sit there for so long because they can't think to get up. And yeah, goats are a bit more challenging. But yeah, so maybe I'll change my mind. I'll probably change it several times. One of the most important things to remember is to always keep an open mind because things change constantly. So yeah, we'll see what my future holds, what I'll end up doing. Maybe I end up working in the city in a small animal practice. You never know. Maybe I'll probably do that at one point. But yeah, I can't wait to find out and to show all you guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys have an amazing day. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!